Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 570 chainsaw. Customer complaint is that it's hard starting, and if you can get it started, it just bogs. So the customer has been through this. He's done the fuel filter and the air filter, and he's telling me that the spark plug and the cylinder are all good. I don't know if he's gone as far as looking at the spark arrestor screen or pressure testing it or anything like that. He wants me to look into the carburetor and see if there's a problem. Apparently that's a job he's not comfortable doing. And, if you want to bring your equipment in and just tell me to look at the carb, I'll look at the carb. The hourly shop rate's the same no matter what. So to get this thing off, first we're going to remove this throttle cable. And you saw I squeezed the trigger and then held the throttle plate open by hand, and the cable just rolls right off of there once you got slack in there. But look how clean it is under here. So the guy has been doing maintenance. Now we want to get the air filter holder off. It's also what holds the carburetor down to the intake. So there's 4 screws, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. They're different lengths. It shouldn't be hard to remember which ones go in which holes. There we go. Stubborn. Now we're going to have to get this airbox out of the way, and part of doing that is making enough slack in these kill wire cables. So you can't really see it too well, but I'm pulling the kill wire cable out of the stop switch. And then the air filter holder, it's got 2 saddles. They're rubber saddles that it sits in. We just pop it out of there, and then we can get it out of the way. The last thing we have to do is get the fuel line off of the carburetor. And there's still fuel in this tank, so after I pull this hose off, I'm going to plug it. That plug I use there is something that came with the Mighty Vac kit, but you can use whatever you want, a Golf Tee or whatever. I'm just taking a quick look here at the intake boots, make sure that they're not torn and nothing obvious going on there. A massive air leak would certainly explain some of the issues he's describing. Our supplier for our shop towels, we were getting them for nothing, and that's dried up. We can't get them anymore. So you'll notice in these videos lately that rag that I'm working on they're never clean anymore. I don't have any more clean ones. Well, look at this. We pulled the pump cover off, and the first thing we find is a plugged micro screen. That plugged micro screen certainly explains a hard starting issue and a bog if it does start, because the carb's not getting enough fuel. So our customer was spot on. He threw some money at the other regular maintenance items, which he should do anyway. And when it still didn't work, he suspected the problem was in the carburetor, and he was right. We're not going to do the ultrasonic cleaner or anything like that here. We're going to replace all the diaphragms and gaskets, put a new micro screen in here, and hopefully he'll be ready to go. We use an official Zama carb kit. I believe this carburetor is a C1M model. And it's just a little bit different than a lot of other carburetors in that it has 2 pump diaphragms. I don't know why they do that. There's like a an extra clear one you got to add to the stack. You'll see that here in a little bit. So we popped out our needle and we just blew out the seat a little bit there, made sure there was no debris in it. Now, some of the new needles, they have like a protective coating on the rubber tip. And sometimes that coating is really thick. So thick, in fact, that I've seen it become a problem. It doesn't always dissolve in the fuel, and sometimes it can hang the needle up. So I always take some carb cleaner and blow that coating off of the needle. And you can see there on that paper towel that gray streak where I wiped the needle off. That's not going to dry up and go away. That's some actual schmutz that was on the needle. Once we have the new needle in place, I'm just going to slide that little arm over so it drops down in there. Tighten up our screw. And we're going to want to look at the metering lever height. On this model, the metering lever height should go across the same height as the sides of the body of the carburetor. So I'll use a flat edge like this razor blade and just lay it across the carburetor and check the height. You can see there I'm raising the height of the needle a little bit. I'm just bending it until I get it so that it's flush, the same height as the sides of the body of the carb. Usually I adjust it, wiggle it, measure it, maybe adjust it again if it needs it. First our gasket, then our metering diaphragm. And then our metering cover. Look at him go. There's our new micro screen. And we have the official handy dandy micro screen insertion tool, so we'll use it. But most anything will work. So we have a pump diaphragm, a clear pump diaphragm, and a pump diaphragm gasket. There's our gasket. There's our clear pump diaphragm. And there's our standard pump diaphragm. Don't even go into the comments and ask me why, because I don't know. We'll put this together with our one screw. You notice that little brass fitting that's hanging out of the carburetor there by the pump diaphragm. That's our impulse line. So that impulse line has to be inserted into the intake runner, lined up while you're putting the carburetor on. Just be aware of that. So the long screws go on top through the air box holder, and the short screws are going to go on the bottom. What are we digging for? Now what we're doing is we're lining up the bottom intake hoses with the air box so that we can get those two screws in there. Now you got to be careful because you're going into plastic. So you don't want to cross thread the screws. You probably don't even want to be using a power driver like I am. And then you want to do your final torque by hand for sure, so you can feel what's going on there. Now that kill wire is going to go back into the switch lever. That's just when you flip the switch, the spring will touch this connection on the end of the wire and ground the ignition module out. Now our rubber saddle gets put back over the tabs on the airbox holder, or air filter holder. Throttle cable goes back on. Choke linkage works as it should. So it's only been like, 10 minutes or something like that, and I already forgot that I've looked in the fuel tank already, but there's a good filter in there and good smelling fuel and no water in the bottom of the tank. So we're going to try and fire this thing up and see if the customer was right, which we're pretty sure he was right, based on what we saw on that micro screen. So that's all I got for you on the Husqvarna 570 chainsaw carburetor microscreen cleaning. Thanks for watching. Later.